We all knew Fantasy Springs at Tokyo DisneySea was going to be impressive, but perhaps nothing has been more praised than the jaw-dropping Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey ride. Although some people are asking, did they go too far? In this video, we're going to break down the amazing sets, animatronics, and special effects that make this ride so memorable and devastating. But we're also going to take a look at the rest of the land. I have a lot to say about the food, and there are some wonderful things around the area that I think others have missed. Hello from Tokyo, I'm Jordan at 8-Bit Theme Park Japan, and today I'm giving a full deep dive into the Frozen Kingdom area of Fantasy Springs at Tokyo DisneySea. Let's start with the area and ask the question that people have been asking since well before Fantasy Springs was even announced, because a Frozen Land was planned for DisneySea a very long time ago, and eventually it grew and morphed into this. People have always been skeptical that something based on the Disney animated movie could fit into DisneySea, despite the park opening with two amazing areas that are based on animated Disney films, but people always seem to forget that. Well, what makes a DisneySea area so special? To me, I always think of it as everything in DisneySea is beautiful from far away, and it's beautiful up close. By which I mean, the big views are amazing, and then the closer and closer you get to them, the more details start to shine, and you realize that upon closer inspection, they're still amazing. You know, I used to live in China, and I would go to a lot of regional Chinese theme parks, and they had the wide view. They had the, from a distance, these things looked amazing. But as soon as you got even a little bit closer to them, you noticed flaws, you noticed things that didn't make sense thematically, you noticed corners that had been cut. DisneySea has those big views in spades, but then also when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, it still looks amazing, maybe even more so. That puts you, the guest, into this headspace where you know that your curiosity and discovery is going to be rewarded, so it just makes you want to soak everything in. Oh, I love DisneySea so much. And I have to say, Arendelle, or Frozen Kingdom as they call this mini-land, I think it ticks that box. You get these beautiful views of the ice castle on the mountain range. And then when you look closer, you see, I mean, the ice castle is amazingly detailed and actually a lot more grand in scale than I thought it was from seeing artwork and photos. Another thing here I was a little bit worried about were these tiny little houses that are meant to be very, very far away. But the forced perspective works great. And to be honest, you don't even really notice them. You have to really be looking for them. The foliage and the detailing on the cliffs make them look like they've been here for years. It's beautiful from far away, and it's beautiful up close. Well, how about Arendelle Castle? Because yes, this area has two castles. You have the forced perspective, smaller ice castle off in the distance, and then we have the big, beautiful wooden Arendelle Castle, which is home to the Royal Banquet of Arendelle restaurant, which we'll get to later. The silhouette of this building from a distance is so cool. It has all these beautiful spires, and it really stands out because Tokyo Disney Resort has a lot of castles, like a lot, especially now. But the way that this one is all wooden, these beautiful green ornamentations on everything, the flags up on the top, just the angular sort of shape of it all, it really stands out and it really holds its own. And it offers something that I think the whole land did very, very well, which also helps it to fit into DisneySea, in that it's not cartoony Arendelle like you might find in Hong Kong or soon Paris, maybe, if they ever finish building that. No, this, going back to those original plans for a Scandinavian port in the corner of DisneySea, this is like not just inspired by the film, but it's also heavily inspired by the places that inspired the film. So you get a bit more of that realism in here. This all looks like real wood. It's not glowing bright blue. It's all aged and weathered and again looks like it's been here for a very long time. And all of this stands up under closer inspection as well. The beautiful wood feels real, with the little mossy finishes on the roof tiles. And this whole courtyard just gives you a real sense of place, that you are standing in front of the castle. Beautiful from a distance, beautiful up close. So we've looked at the ride building, we've looked at the restaurant building, and then over in Arendelle Village, you have a lot more of these details and you can explore this. Again, it gives you much more of a sense of space. And what's in the village? What's in these buildings? Well, toilets. There's toilet, it's just toilets. The whole village is just a toilet. It's very strange. I'm quite certain that this thing was originally designed for fast pass machines to go in, because it looks very much like that, and we know that this land was designed for fast pass. the last thing, maybe ever, that would be designed for fast-pass machines. Oh, I miss them. But without those, and without any sort of small shops or stalls or anything here, it really gives you the feeling like, oh, it's just toilets. Like, the area invites you to explore it. You look at it and you're like, oh, okay, what's gonna be over here then? And there are some sweet details if you're a nerd like me and you enjoy just looking in windows and seeing things. But if you're expecting much more than that, it's a very, very beautiful toilet. Maybe the most beautiful toilet I've seen. But it was surprising getting into this village and seeing it so pretty and then realizing, oh, there's nothing here. Okay, moving on. Like, areas in DisneySea can have that problem of everything's pretty, so even the silly small things are really pretty. But I don't know if anywhere else feels so kind of superfluous like that. It's better than nothing, I guess. I'm glad they did it to contrast with the castle, so it's not just a castle courtyard next to a mountain range. It does give more of a sense of space. I love this sled that's here. That's a nice sled. I think small photo ops like this are underrated sometimes. Like, this is gonna be in so many people's family photos. So does it fit into DisneySea? Yes, absolutely. It even has the water tie-in. It has the beautiful theming, beautiful from a distance, beautiful up close. It has those details that are like, they didn't need to put this here, but they did it anyway. I felt like when I was here, it couldn't be anywhere else other than DisneySea because it has that level of detail. Unfortunately, it is all compounded by one big problem that a lot of Fantasy Springs has, but nowhere else in Fantasy Springs has this problem as much as Frozen Kingdom. And that is the ugly Fantasy Springs Hotel. I'm sorry, when you're up close, it can look fine, but being in Arendelle, knowing that this stupid magical spirits story, this idea that magical spirits rebuilt these different areas based on stories and this isn't actually the real Arendelle, that all goes out of the window while you're there. You're clearly meant to be in the real Arendelle. But then you see this giant hotel in the back, which is the reason they had to create this ridiculous story. Because it's the only way they could justify having this big hotel that's super visible from Arendelle. I mean, I'm forever gonna have a love-hate relationship with that hotel because it's ugly as sin, but I also had the time of my life when I stayed there. So part of me does kind of like seeing it for that reason because it just reminds me of the wonderful time I had there. But it does take away from the Arendelle thing. If that could just be hills or anything, nothing preferably, just blue sky would be nice. I think it would be an improvement, but hey, it is what it is. I'm not gonna harp on about it too much. There are some really, really cool little Easter eggs around this area, which I'm not gonna get into here because I'm going to do a full Hidden Secrets of Fantasy Springs video soon. If you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe to this channel and tap the bell thing, I guess. That's what people say, right? Do the things that all the other content creators say you should do, but do them for this channel. There is another blemish that this area has, which is hard to overlook, especially, as I'm told, if you've been to the Frozen Kingdom, or the World of Frozen, it's called there, at Hong Kong Disneyland. Because not only do they have the advantage of not having a big ugly hotel there and having a real mountain range, which just makes that whole park so much more beautiful, one of the biggest selling points of their World of Frozen area was the fact that it is so densely populated with amazing characters. Not only do you see Anna and Elsa, but you can also see Kristoff, and you can see villagers, and you can even see little Mossy, a little troll puppet that someone carries around, and she's adorable. I am constantly reminded of this by my close friend and podcast co-host, The Happy Zan. You can find him on Instagram. He takes beautiful photos of Tokyo Disney Resort. And you can listen to us give a fun, carefree weekly update of Tokyo Disney Resort every week at Land of the Rising Fun podcast. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. But yeah, it does feel a shame. Like, the first time I went into this land, I saw Anna and Elsa not in the Arendelle area. They were over by the hotel, which was a shame. Like, why aren't they in the Frozen area? I mean, we do a similar thing at Tokyo Disneyland where you can see Belle and Gaston at the front of the park instead of in, you know, that beautiful Belle's Village area of the park that we built. I'll never understand the reasoning for that. I think Tokyo Disney just seemed to like having, like, character areas where they can have lots of different characters there. and they'll just use them for multi-purpose rather than trying to weave them into more areas of the parks. I don't know. But it seems very silly to me that people go to Fantasy Springs, get a photo with Elsa, and it's in front of a rock that looks like Cinderella instead of in front of her castle or her sister's castle or the village that they're supposed to rule over. So yeah, if you've seen videos online of Hong Kong's Frozen Land and you're coming here and you're expecting it to be full of characters walking around, it is not. Which is a shame again, as this whole village area, like I said, is just a toilet. Like, it would have been a great way to make the village feel like something's happening there. But Tokyo Disney are weird about characters. I don't know, it's a shame. So while if you want to meet the characters, for some reason they'll be hanging out by the hotel that somebody built next to a recreation of where they live. I don't know, the storyline gets really complicated. The actual Arendelle area is very, very pretty, and something that I didn't quite appreciate until I went with my daughter is how faithful to the films it was. She was having a really fun time walking around and pointing out to me, oh, this is where this scene happened, and this is where this scene happened, and it sort of made me appreciate lands based on movie franchises a little bit more, seeing how quickly and easily she was able to appreciate all of these small details. I'm gonna do a whole hidden secrets video later because she actually helped me find a bunch of them. But for the sake of this video, I think Arendelle is very, very pretty. The castle at the back is gorgeous. The village is really, really sweet. I just wish there was anything to do there. And there are lots of fun details as well. The area was clearly designed with a high budget and by a team who knew the films, did their research, and cared about creating somewhere that was not only beautiful, but had that attention to detail that is synonymous with Tokyo DisneySea. Okay, so speaking of that big castle at the back, what is there to eat? Well, funnily enough, the huge castle in the back of the land isn't the ride, that's actually the restaurant. But first we're going to start just to the right of that, as for part of the celebration of the castle opening up the gates to allow all of these guests to visit, it seems that Wandering Oaken has been given his own little stand to sell what they call yoo-hoo bread. Now, before we get onto this interesting snack, I do find it very strange that they didn't put this in the village. They didn't put anything in the village. Like, they had a little food stand. That would have been perfect to stick in the village so the village isn't just a toilet. But hey, this is what they did. It may also be worth pointing out that when it opened, this only sold bread and a few soft drinks, but since then they've started to sell beer as well, so if you're a drinker, it's quite nice to be able to pick up a beer from here and walk around Fantasy Springs with one. Both this and the popcorn stand in Neverland are the only two places where you can buy food and drinks, well, you can only get drinks here, you can't get drinks at the popcorn stand, without a mobile order. Now, the mobile orders haven't been very difficult to get in my experience, but I guess there's a chance that you could be there and there are no mobile orders left, or probably a more likely scenario, which is that your credit card doesn't work in the app for whatever reason. So it's nice that we now have somewhere you can buy alcoholic drinks without needing a mobile order and to go into a restaurant and everything. Okay, so how about this yoo-hoo bread? Well, they call it cardamom and meat bread, and it's interesting. I respect that they made an interesting choice. I think regarding the food in Fantasy Springs, they may have made too many interesting choices, but this one I think pays off. It's something really unique. It feels Scandinavian. I don't know if it really is something they eat there. I've never seen it before, but it tastes like something you might find in IKEA. I don't know. And it's really, really nice, actually. It's a little on the pricey end as far as snacks go, but it does feel a bit more premium and a bit more unique. The bread is warm and crunchy on the outside while being soft and moist in the middle, and this meat cardamom thing is really, really tasty. They're not small either, so I would recommend if you're a little hesitant to try one, grab one and share it with your group. Let everyone try a little bit, and then if someone falls in love with it, they can get one for themselves. I think it adds a bit of depth to the area, it's a really nice snack, and I'm very glad you can also go there to pick up drinks now. So Oaken's gets a big thumb up from me. Well, how about this big restaurant next door? So the Royal Banquet of Arendelle is inside Arendelle Castle, and we were all quite surprised to find out a few months before it opened that this was not going to be a table service restaurant where you have a waiter and you sit at the table as they come and take orders like a real restaurant. No, this is a counter-service restaurant, which works in a way much more like a fast food restaurant, where you go up and pick your food and then find your table and sit down at the table and eat it. However, the way that they've executed this one, they clearly wanted it to be like a counter-service plus. The prices are pretty high, and it's one price for a full set which includes a dessert, which none of the other counter-service restaurants at Tokyo Disney do. And the design of the interior is obviously stunning. I mean, look at this place. Whilst I would have expected this castle building to house the ride, which I think maybe the ride designers did as well, because, well, we'll get to that later, but the queue is set in the castle, which is a little bit strange. The castle is sort of split into three different areas. There are the front part, which is very much in the castle building that you can see from the outside, and you can tell because this round area here, you can see very noticeably from the outside. There's then the grand hall with the blue ceiling, which is where everybody wants to go. So it can be pretty hard to get a seat in here. And even if you do get a seat, you may regret it if you're sat in the middle, because this middle area tends to become a long line for the photo op in the throne at the front. But then there's another area behind this where you quite clearly leave the castle and enter a sort of backstage warehouse bit that they've added for extra capacity, which was obviously needed. I'm glad that this many people can get in the castle. But as you walk back here, you do start to feel, it feels a bit less special, you know? It feels a bit more like you're just in a food court restaurant rather than being in the castle. But hey, I admire that they've let you have this experience of eating inside the castle. They haven't charged an arm and a leg for it. Yes, it's more than a normal counter service, but it's a lot less than a table service restaurant is. And more importantly, you don't have to get a reservation for it. The table service restaurants at Tokyo Disney can be really, really difficult to eat at because you need a reservation. Here, you can get a mobile order on the day that you get in. Like I said, usually they're very easy to get, hours and hours into the day. And you can go in there and eat inside the castle. It's really, really cool. Now, some of you must be thinking, oh, I haven't seen any of the characters walking around yet. I can't wait to see the characters there. Yeah, that would have been good, wouldn't it? For some strange reason, Tokyo Disney does not do character dining anymore. I don't know why. I don't know if it's something to do with characters being so popular here that it caused bottlenecks in the restaurants, or I don't know, but we don't do it, and it's a real shame because this would be a perfect venue to have Frozen characters walking around in the Frozen castle, you know? But yeah, sadly, please don't come here expecting characters to be inside. They are not. Okay, so how about the food? Well, yeah, it's weird again. I don't know why all the food in Fantasy Springs is weird, but it is. You'll pick it up, and although it kind of looks like airplane food with this plastic box around the side, the food itself actually looks pretty nice. You have this pastry pie with a little snowflake insignia on the top, this sashimi salmon with some other veggies in there, and some fruit, which do admittedly give it an interesting taste. You've also got this potato gratin, and then this cute little Olaf dessert mousse thing at the back. It looks like a full meal, right? With a lot of different flavors that you're gonna experience. And after the boldness of the Yoo-hoo bread next door, you're thinking, okay, they're gonna take some leaps with the tastes and make this quite a unique experience. So if you're anything like me, the first thing you're gonna get into is the pie. And I did not care for this pie. So someone else in my group put it very, very well. He said, they've slow cooked the beef so it's really soft and tender, and it looks great, and then it just has zero taste. It's zero taste, it's just brown and water. There's also pasta in the pie, which is just confusing to me, but I mean, that's fine. If it was tasty, it would be fine, but there's no taste to it. It's really sad. I don't know how you make this much of a mess of a pie. Next door at Tokyo Disneyland at Gaston's, they did have a steak pie in there for a long time, and that was really yummy. I don't know how they messed this up. It's really strange. The potato gratin next to it doesn't really up the taste much more. It's pretty standard. You get some different textures in there, but I mean, if you're just eating just for textures, I don't know, go chew some cardboard or something. I did actually quite like the salmon with this fruity flavors attached to it. I haven't had salmon with that before, and that was what I was expecting from the whole meal, was something that's not crazy out there, but just a little bit different to what I've had before. So I come away saying, oh, that was unique, that was interesting. I've eaten somewhere different. But this was the only thing that really got that. The star of the show, honestly, is the Olaf Marshmallow Chocolate Mousse, which is a shame. I really wish that you could buy these separately because they're really sweet. The Olaf thing on the top is very much like the LGM mochi that have become Instagram favorites of anyone who visits Tokyo Disney. Everyone seems to need a photo of them. This is basically one of those in the top, but with lemon inside. It was really, really nice. Underneath it, you have chocolate mousse with they say marshmallow on the top. It's like a white cream on the top. This is fine. It's chocolate mousse, you know, it's whatever. I made the mistake of not really understanding what the Olaf thing on the top was and just sort of trying to mash it all together. That wasn't a great idea. I think you eat the Olaf thing first and then the mousse is kind of an afters. And the lemony tang does do quite a lot to complement the sort of deeper chocolatey flavors of the mousse. But yeah, overall, very disappointing. And a lot of people have said it all looks like airplane food. What was even stranger was at the end of the meal, you go to throw it all away, and there's like 5 different receptacles, and you have to throw away each thing separately. Alex, my podcast co-host and dear friend, sort of laughed and said to me, oh, do they want us to wash it up ourselves as well? Like, it's so much work at the end of this meal that you've paid for that you're supposed to be eating in a castle. It's like, okay, we're letting the peasants into the castle, but you have to clean up yourselves. I don't know. What I've resorted to now, ever since having my first meal here, is just going in for a glass of wine. The wine's pretty good. The setting is gorgeous. And if I go here with anyone new, I want to show them the inside of it, right? So I just go in and have a glass of white wine. It does the job. And honestly, it feels more fitting to be inside the castle having a glass of wine than it does to be having a plastic tray of airplane food. It's very strange. Okay, so we've explored Arendelle, we've tried all the food, and it's finally time. Our standby pass is ready. We're going to ride Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey. And starting at the name, I sort of laughed at the name when they first announced it because all of the names seemed so silly because they all start with a name and then apostrophe S, and then what the ride is. But Anna and Elsa's Frozen Journey really seems to perfectly sum up what this ride is. It's very much about the two sisters. It is a journey, and you have to stick Frozen in there as well, don't you? I mean, it is all physically frozen, let alone the name of the movie. It may also be worth pointing out that the movie is not called Frozen in Japan. It's called Anna and the Snow Queen. So Japanese guests are much more used to hearing Anna and Elsa than they are the term Frozen attached to this movie. As you walk under the entrance and scan your standby pass, you'll be enveloped in all of these wooden trussels, which you then get inside. And as I said earlier, what's very strange is we've seen from the exterior of this ride that it's the mountain with the ice castle on the top. We're walking away from Arendelle. We're walking away from Arendelle Castle, and we're headed into the mountains, which is where a lot of the film takes place. But then the instant we get inside the ride building, we're in Arendelle Castle. And you very quickly get used to it and accept that, okay, it's not geographically correct, but whatever. But it is very strange that first instant when you're like, oh, so there's 2 castles? There's 2 of them. Really seems like they wanted to have their cake and eat it with this one, or have their castle to eat in and have another castle to have a ride in, as the saying goes. I don't have much of a problem with this. It is a little bit strange at first, but the thing I do have a bit of a problem with, and this is super nitpicky, but I mean, you're watching a huge YouTube video about the rides. Like, nitpicking is, if you're not here for nitpicking, then I'm not sure what you are here for. Some of the paintings on the walls in the queue are exactly identical to the ones we've seen in the restaurant. And I don't know, copying and pasting stuff, it feels a bit lazy. And it's just as a guest, it's just not interesting. It's, you know, like, oh, I've just seen this. I've seen this before. Because most people are going to do both. And if they don't, everyone who eats in the castle is going to want to ride the ride. Like, the systems in place right now might mean that not everyone who wants to ride the ride gets to ride it. But in the future, hopefully the not too distant future, everyone who wants to ride the ride will ride the ride, and everyone who wants to eat in the restaurant will eat in the restaurant, and a lot of people are going to see both of these things, and it's just not interesting. You know, queues need to be stimulating, and they need to give you lots of things to look at, a lot of novel and interesting, and seeing pictures you've just eaten your meal next to? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Let me know in the comments if you think this is a big problem or if I'm overreacting. Having said that, the queue is full of beautiful details. It really helps to set the tone of the ride. It's that classic Disney-style queue where there's beautiful theming, beautiful placemaking, the music is gorgeous, it all wraps you up in this world, but it's not the ride. It's not starting the attraction before you've got on the ride. You're waiting to start the ride. And by that, I mean, it's not crazy exciting. There's not stuff going on everywhere. Every room seems to have one thing that's sort of in action, something where something is happening. In this first room, there's this beautiful triangular window, which very infrequently, maybe too infrequently, Olaf will quickly wander by or stand there and make a silly face or whatever. I really like these kinds of things. I really like these blink and you'll miss it things. I think there's a really tricky balance to it. In Minnie's Style Studio in the queue there, Figaro the cat will jump out every now and then, and he stays there for a really long time, and obviously that's for young kids, and they clearly want the kid to be able to say, "Look, Mummy, there's a cat," and the parents say, "Oh yeah, you're right, there is a cat," or vice versa. You know, the parents saying, "Look, there's a cat," and then the kids having time to see it. In this queue, however, it can be a bit too quick, this window, and I saw Olaf and quickly said to my daughter, look, it's Olaf, and he was already gone. I don't know, like, it's fine, it's not a big deal, but maybe it was a little bit too quick. Then again, as someone who lives here and is going to be spending a lot of time in this queue in the future, it's kind of nice knowing that there are things that, like, I haven't seen yet, or I haven't had a good look at yet, and when I do it again and again and again, I'm going to notice those things. Not only does this set the setting of the ride experience, but it also sets the time period, because we can see that Anna and Elsa are grown up. Which is another thing that they seem to have tried to have their cake and eat it with as well, because when we start the ride, we'll see them as kids again. But anyway, clearly this is not an everything counts experience. This area is not hyper-realistic like a lot of other areas of DisneySea are. You know, it's based on the movie. They've taken a lot of liberties with what they can do in the spaces and things, and it's fine. It's a fantastic experience. Whatever. If that's what they needed to do it, then I'm fine with that. So after admiring all the details in this first room and spending probably just the right amount of time in there, you get into this second room, which has a very different feel. Now we can see that it's the evening because we have this giant glass dome over us, and we can see out and we can see the moon. Okay, so it's evening time. We've set the time of day as well for the experience. We're not in this room for as long as the last one, which I think is a good thing because we spent quite a lot of time in the last room. It's nice to feel like the pace is picking up a bit. And this has another blink and you'll miss it thing, which is really, really cool. It turns out the ceiling is a giant screen, and they use it so tastefully because every now and then, every 15 minutes or so, it's not frequent at all, you'll see some little circles appear on the glass, and you can hear Olaf humming, and you'll figure out that these are Olaf's feet, and he's walking on the ceiling. It's really sweet, and it's nice to have something that you look up at, because like I said, the window in the last room, it's really hard to see when he's going past there, unless you're right next to it in the queue. Whereas this, everyone in this room can just look up and see it. It's really sweet. I really like it. But the next room is easily my favorite of the queue, and it's a tiny little room, but what they did in here is so cool. With just one prop, but it's wonderful. So when you get into the next room, you'll see this little mock-up of the castle, and it's actually a moving figure. It's got these moving figures coming in and out of it. Each one comes up, they do a little spin, they go back in, another little cutie comes out. That's so cool. The only problem with this room is that it's too good for a queue. Like, it actually breaks the queue, because everybody wants to stop and look at it for a while, but the room's really short. You're not in there for very long. So everybody stops to look at it, and there's always a big gap in front of you. Thankfully, the next room makes up for it, because the next room doesn't have very much going on. It's just a crocodile queue. This is actually the only room that doesn't have some kind of animated component to it. The fireplace is crackling away at the side, and you can see some nice pictures, but I think, to the point I made earlier about how Disney queues kind of calm you down to make the ride seem even more impressive and even more kinetic, I think this being the last room of the queue before you get into the station, they're trying to kind of double down on that and really calm you down so that the ride explodes when you get in there. And boy, oh boy, does it do that. The queue then does something that I really like about the Rapunzel queue, in that it goes over the boats. I think this is just great. It gives some levels to it. You can see the ride vehicles before you get in, which is a great introduction to the experience. And it's a great use of space. You know, you have to use that space anyway. You may as well put the queue over it. We come back down, and here is where my famous top tip that I always mention really comes into play. If you use this for any ride, let it be this one, and that is always ask for the front row. You wait a minimal amount of extra time, like less than a minute more you're going to be waiting. And for this ride, you really want to be at the front. Normally, boat rides, things are happening all around you, but this is not a typical boat ride. Everything's going on right in front of you, so definitely ask for the front. I've ridden this a bunch of times, but I've only ever done it once, not at the front, and it just confirmed that, yes, you should always sit in the front row on this ride. Another thing to mention is that, surprisingly, although the drops on this ride are tiny, a fair bit of water can get into the boat from the sides. So if you're sat at the front on either side, you may get a lap full of water. There's not like clockwork, you can't really predict that it's gonna happen, but sometimes a big bunch of water will just land on your lap. You'll probably notice that the seats might already be wet before you even sit down in them as well, and this is the reason. I find it a little bit strange because this is not a wet ride. It clearly wasn't intended to be a wet ride. It feels like a mistake. But considering how intentional everything else about this ride is and how much thought has clearly gone into it, I don't know if it was a mistake. Maybe they just overlooked it because they thought the drops are so small they don't even have to think about that stuff. Frankly, I kind of wish that they'd gone more in that direction. Like, if you're gonna get wet, let's get wet, you know, and let's make it a water ride with like a decent drop in it. Having said that, it's really, really cool. It's exactly what DisneySea needed, is some big major rides that the whole family can do. The family rides in the park up to this point have been Sinbad, which is incredible, but then mostly small flat rides. 20,000 Leagues anyone can ride, but a lot of people don't want to because it's dark and claustrophobic, and it's not exactly a kid's ride. And whilst the emotional content of this ride I wouldn't really say is for kids either, the fact is it is based off of a Disney animated movie, and keeping those drops minimal just helps to ensure that this can be a ride that everyone can enjoy. I do think it was a good move. It's just weird that you can get really wet sometimes. Okay, so we're sat down in the front row of the boat. We can see this glowing moon right in front of us. I think there's a Mickey over on the left of it, but I'm not sure, which is probably how Mickeys should be. Like, you don't want to be certain that you can see it. I love that this is matte painted. It just kind of harkens back to the old Fantasyland style rides, but obviously with a modern touch. The ride will use projections later on, but I'm so glad that they didn't do that here. It gives a great kind of calm before the storm, I feel like. It's nice that you don't see anything moving in the distance. You don't see some doors opening and get a glimpse of a ride or something. You see this tranquil night sky that really sets the scene. I love it. Especially because then you turn around the corner and suddenly it's like the magic comes to life. You're like, okay, here we go. Because between that, the more dull end of the queue section and then this very static image that you're looking at, suddenly seeing this smoky, glowing area and then seeing the trolls in the distance starting to move, you're like, oh, this is gonna be good. The adorable little troll kids ask the grandpa troll to tell them the story about Anna and Elsa, and then we really get into it. And this is actually where one of the few things that I don't love about the ride comes up. It's worse later on in the ride, but I have to mention it here as well. If you've ridden it, you'll know exactly what I'm gonna say. They used clips from the movie, and it doesn't ruin the ride, like, it's fine. But I just feel like if they wanted projection mapped animations here, like the way that they move around the vehicle, kind of move over you in the tunnel over to one side and then back over to the right, that's all cool. I like that. I just wish it was done in like a stylistic way. I wish it was like cave drawings coming to life or something. That would have been really, really nice. It's a little bit disappointing that you're just watching clips from the movie, you know? But as a kind of introduction to the ride, a sort of foreword to the ride, I think it works okay here. It doesn't offend me. We then get to my favorite scene of the entire ride. I was blown away by this. I love that they let it be kind of abstract and artsy. It's weird. You enter this huge room and you can see that the wall in front of you is not attached to the walls. It doesn't look like a real room. It's more of a artistic representation of the room. And you notice that Anna is stood at the door and she knocks 3 times and asks, "Do you want to build a snowman?" And then the whole wall with the door on it turns at exactly the same time as the boat turns on the turntable in the opposite direction, and Elsa is revealed, sat her back against the door, frosting up. Oh, I think it's so perfect. It perfectly sets the tone for the entire ride. It's beautifully done. It's very creatively done. And oh, I just love it. Not to mention that these animatronic figures, they don't have a ton of movement, but the sculpts of their faces are just perfect. It's really cool to actually see Elsa as a kid here. I liked that they didn't try to force in the actual scene from the movie, and instead they adapted it to something that works better for the ride. Seeing her as this distraught little child just makes it even more devastating that she's so alone and afraid. And then the projection mapping on the door. This is so well synced up to the movement of the door. I was looking up and down this wall thinking the projector must be attached to the wall that's moving because it moves perfectly in sync. I couldn't find it, but I still feel like it probably is because it just moves so well. Anyway, that's maybe super nerdy stuff, but the projection mapping behind her of the ice growing is perfect use of projections, you know, projections as effects, projections as enhancements, not as the focal point. Perfect scene, perfect introduction. I love it. And then the next scene introduces a lot of aspects that we become familiar with in this ride. One is the kind of up and down of the emotional beats of the story, which, I mean, let's face it, the movie's great and everything, but the fixer-upper scene, the way that they have this like jaunty dance number about finding love despite being a bit weird, and then it suddenly ends and we're like, oh no, Anna's gonna die. Like the emotional tone of the movie is very up and down, and the ride is as well, but the ride I think handles it a lot better because it seems very clearly like it gives you a heavier moment and then a lighter moment and then a heavier moment and then a lighter moment. And it seems a lot more intentional and better paced, frankly, than the movie is. Another thing this next scene introduces is the fun movements of the boat. We go down this very tiny backwards drop, but it's just the perfect little fun propulsion into this scene where now we see Anna and she's smiling and she's happy and she's excited that we're opening up the gates and letting people into the castle. Again, this is a very open, non-realistic depiction of the story. You know, other rides in DisneySea, like Tower of Terror, you're stepping inside the actual elevators from the story. You know, Journey to the Center of the Earth, you're getting into a vehicle that burrows into the center of the Earth. On Frozen, you're riding a boat through the middle of the castle. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't need to. It's fine. Now, entering this scene backwards is genius for a lot of reasons. One, it gives us that amazing turntable moment I just talked about before it, where everything can happen right in front of you. It gives you this fun, ooh, moment before getting into the more fun aspect of this song. And then as we get into the next room, you realize the genius of having that be a backwards section because we stop again on another turntable. You can see Anna still singing, and then we get the juxtaposition of seeing Elsa now in the foreground, who is singing along with the same song, but she's singing about how she's got all this pressure and she's so terrified of letting people come near her, letting people into the castle, but she feels like it's finally time and she finally has to do it. She has this duty that she has to fulfill. And being able to see Anna smiling in the distance and Elsa here in the foreground, oh, just brilliant. So well done. Genius move. The ride has just started and it's already had so many of these wonderful tricks and just a genius use of this ride system. Now, there was speculation when this ride got announced that this or Rapunzel, that one of these boat rides was going to use the Shanghai Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure ride system, where those boats actually use a magnetic system, which means that they can turn and they can move backwards whilst moving along the same track, and they can control the speed of the boats. Now, I love that ride. and that ride system, and I really hope that we do see more of it. But I'm so glad they didn't use it on this ride. They realized that this ride system, the standard boat ride that's existed for decades and decades and decades, like turntables are not anything new. Backward sections on boat rides are nothing new. But they used them in such a fresh and creative way, and frankly, the sheer amount of them that they use in this ride, it feels so fresh, it feels brand new. If you told someone this is a brand new ride system that's never been done before, a lot of people would probably believe you, because just the way that they tell the story through all these stops and starts and turns and forwards and backwards and tiny drops as these kind of punctuation marks in the story, it feels brand new, it feels so fresh, but it's not. Absolute brilliant design. I just can't get over how brilliantly they brought all these things together. And you have to think, maybe that shed some money off of the ride system budget rather than using the Shanghai one, and that gave them more money for the excellent scenes and animatronics. Who knows? Speaking of excellent scenes and animatronics, not only can we see the ice kind of spreading across Elsa's hands like we did in the movie as her anxiety levels grow, there's also a very subtle but brilliant touch in this scene where as Elsa turns, you can see her dress moving steadily up the stairs like it would in real life. But clearly that was all mechanized and, you know, very intentionally done. It didn't happen by accident. Oh, just the attention to detail in this thing, my word. Okay, so we're at another pretty emotional, tense moment of the ride story. What next? A small dip into Love is an Open Door, a much more carefree song. We go back to Anna's side of the story where she's having a good time, she's enjoying it. This scene, I mean, a couple of animatronics of Anna and Hans dancing would have been an improvement, yeah, sure. But it seems like they chose to go with projections for this scene. Maybe it was a stylistic choice. Maybe they felt like they wanted to give you a breather before giving you a bunch of more animatronics in the next scene. It's probably a budget thing, let's be honest, but it's fine. The scene works great. And it sort of gives you this fun moment of levity because it gives you, as a rider, permission to not be focused too much on, wow, there's this amazing animatronic I have to focus on. Like, you can kind of look around. There's silhouettes of them on either side of the boat. You've had this little dip into this area. It's a fun moment of levity. Before the doors open and the music takes a turn, and once again, we're into an emotionally tense scene where we see Anna's face, which is brilliantly lit because the bottom of her face is just covered in shadow. She looks evil. And we're about to see this very dark moment that she's going to come to regret. As the boat moves through, we start to see Anna in the back with Hans, and she's asking, Elsa, why do you always push people away? Why do you always do this? Elsa screams, enough, and throws her hand to the side, and the quickness of this effect, where all of these huge icicles spring out of the ground. We see projection mapping covering the whole area in frost. The Anna and Hans animatronics recoil because of the sudden impact. We can also see the Duke of Wesselton react and say, she's a witch, she's a witch. And there's this brilliant effect in this room. When I first came into the room, I thought, oh, they projection mapped the fountains. That's a little bit weird, but I mean, it looks fine, whatever. If they were real fountains, they might not read as well. You know, they're a lot more bright and punchy and you can see them. Okay, fine. And then this effect happens and there's this brilliant, it's so simple, but it's such a great effect. The fountain on the right side is clearly like this big dome thing, and it turns and reveals that on the back, there are these icicle spikes. But with the projection mapping, it just looks fantastic. It looks like this fountain is just frozen over and the icicles have spawned from the back, you know, pushing out from the back of this magical ice impact. It looks fantastic. I absolutely love it. This is a brilliant scene. It was also an emotionally intense scene, so what do we get next? Olaf, silly little Olaf walking along. We see Anna and Kristoff on one side, Sven on the other side. Olaf says, oh, I love summer, but let's go find Elsa, she's over here. It's a moment of levity, and it forces Olaf into the story, which I think is a good thing because he's a great animatronic. He's really fun to look at, you can do a lot of fun things with it, and seeing him walking along is really, really cool. I love how they made him so like shiny and sparkly with these fabrics that they use on him. He looks a bit fluffy as well, but that's fine, he can be fluffy. This is actually one of the moments where you do have to crane your neck a bit if you're in the front row. There's only 2 of them in the whole ride. Everything else is right in front of you, so I definitely recommend the front row. But here, yeah, you do have to turn your head to the side a little bit. I mean, the people sat in every other row should have something nice to look at as well, I suppose. It then gets a little quiet and we turn the corner and we hear that iconic piano intro to Let It Go. And we've been going down a few drops, haven't we? Well, if you've been down drops, what do you need to do? You need to go back up again. So they've used the climb hill. Again, everything is used so well in the story. We're ascending a mountain. Why wouldn't we be going up a climb hill? We can see Elsa on her own at the top of the mountain as we start to climb up, and seeing the mountain from the bottom as we slowly ascend and hear her singing the song, it just highlights how alone she is. We can see this huge distance around her. We're ascending the mountain with her. You can see her footsteps in the snow. No one else has been anywhere near her, and she's all on her own. We get to the top and there's no drop. The song seamlessly continues as we see Elsa doing magic. The magic's all projection mapped on the back, but I think it works great because we've got, again, a real animatronic as the focal point. The magic is sort of secondary. And then there's an effect which I don't love. Like, I love that they tried. It was an A for effort, but she's sort of building the staircase with magic. But you can very clearly see the end of it is like this flat screen almost that's moving along, revealing the staircase. It's not perfect, but I love that they tried. I love that there's moving aspects to it. I love that it's not just a projection on the wall. It's definitely a lot better than it could have been in any of those circumstances, so they get a pass from me. And then right at the moment that the chorus kicks in, the doors open up. We see Elsa in her iconic blue dress as she bursts into the chorus of Let It Go. And this room is projection mad. But again, we have this animatronic. I love it. She's in the foreground. She's the focal point. But you can look around and see this magic flowing from every side. And it's so cool that they give Let It Go so much time in the ride. So much room to breathe. But it doesn't take away from the rest of the ride. You don't come off the ride thinking, oh, it was the Let It Go ride with a couple of extra bits. Like, no, that part of the ride is huge, and they give it the gravitas that it deserves, not only as such an iconic song, but also as such an important moment in the story. But there's plenty before and after it. I think they did a really great job with that. You know what else they did a great job with? That iconic, there's that word again, moment at the end of the song where she says, the cold never bothered me anyway, and the doors shut, and perfectly in sync, the doors shut. And as someone who studied music technology, it's very impressive that they made it seamless. That whole song through 4 different scenes of the ride seamlessly works through the whole song. Brilliantly done. And we didn't get a drop, but we are moving backwards again now. Again, the turntable used perfectly to give us this moment where we're stopped and we're looking at Elsa in front of us. And now it reveals Anna to the side, and she's saying, Elsa, Elsa, end the winter, please. And she says, go away, Anna. And we see Anna's heart get struck with ice. She does a big thing that people do when their hearts get struck with ice and flails her arms all over the place. And then she turns dark. And then we move backwards. We get this sort of ice storm, this blizzard, and we get a couple of drops in a row. It feels really turbulent. We don't know what's going to happen. We can see the sails of shipwrecked boats, and projected onto them is Hans's fight with Elsa, and then Anna jumps in to save her sister, turns completely to ice, and shatters his sword as he lowers it onto her hand. Again, these are clips from the movie. Again, I really wish they went for something more stylized, something unique to the ride. And, you know, while we're in make-believe land, like, animatronics, imagine the light flashing and you seeing an animatronic of Hans on one side of the boat and Elsa on the other. And then you go down the second drop and the lights flash again and suddenly Anna is there and she turns to ice. That could have been a really cool moment. But hey, you move through here very quickly. It gets these story beats across so that we can get to another amazing scene of the ride where we see Anna who's frozen and Elsa looks devastated. She's crying next to her sister. She says, I love you. And then the projection mapped ice on the Anna animatronic thaws and turns clear. We see her dress that was frozen upright in the air suddenly turns back to fabric. Another very simple effect done just through essentially a stick that's raised up behind it that quickly drops down, but it looks brilliant along with her movements and the projection mapping fading. It all looks so good. It's so brilliantly done. And these animatronic figures are so great that we see Elsa smiling. She goes from crying and sobbing and crouched down to now she looks delighted that her sister's okay. We've gone from Anna looking frozen in terror to looking elated and relieved that finally, after all these years, she's had an embrace from her sister and she knows that her sister loves her. It's a beautiful moment in the story. It's a beautiful moment in the ride. It's done so well. A couple of little nitpicks here, though. This is, again, off to the side, to the right, so you do have to crane your neck a little bit to get a look at it. And if you do look straight forward, like an idiot, if you choose to look forward, despite something clearly going on to the right of you, you can see Anna from before getting hit by the ice magic. Whatever, you know, like... If you're looking for these things, you're going to notice them, right? If you're looking at the ceiling and looking behind you for the lighting rigs and things, you're going to see things you're not supposed to see. That's always the case in rides. It's not a big problem. And then in our final excellent use of these turntables, we turn to the left. We see Olaf, delighted that the story has met a positive conclusion. And then we hear the na 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 hey na na music fading in. We go down the biggest drop of the ride. It's not a big drop, much smaller than Pirates, but it's the biggest drop of the ride. We go down, the music reaches its crescendo. We see the whole town getting projection mapped, so it's being thawed from the ice. You're just covered in this feeling, this wave, a literal wave that the boat's creating of elation and relief after this emotional turmoil of this ride, this emotional journey that Anna and Elsa have been on, hence the excellent name of the ride, comes to a positive conclusion. Now, the ride could end right there, but it doesn't. We get this wonderful scene of the village where everyone looks so happy. We see Sven and Kristoff enjoying their new place in the village as the royal ice makers. We see all of the people celebrating. Olaf is skating around the frozen ice fountain, now frozen intentionally so that everyone can have fun ice skating, not because Elsa's lost her mind. We see the sisters skating around in a circle. These are very limited animatronics, but that's totally fine. They're just skating around in a circle. The sculpts on their faces look so happy. They perfectly capture that feeling of finally having fun together after what, like over a decade of them being trapped in different rooms in the same castle. We can see this little kid giving a little reindeer a carrot, which is great. We need more cute things in ride. Cute is good. So that must be the conclusion of the ride, right? No, we get one last kiss goodbye from Olaf, who has like one of 6 different phrases he says. I mean, they're all in Japanese, so it's very likely that you won't be able to appreciate them. But it's nice that they did that to change it up each time, you know? And then our boat comes back into the station where we boarded. We're back where we began, but we have all been on a journey together with Anna and Elsa. It's an absolutely phenomenal ride. It's don't miss. It's worth traveling to Tokyo Disney for. It complements the other rides in Fantasy Springs really well because, yes, this is clearly the best one. But none of the other rides are trying to be this. None of the other rides are trying to be this emotional journey that leaves you an emotional wreck, you know? We have an adventurous ride in Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure, which is a simulator that's all screens, you know? And then there's Fairy Tinkerbell's Busy Buggies, which is a cute little ride for little kids where we see the greatest animatronic of all time. And then the Rapunzel ride is very much a romance ride. It's a romantic ride. If you want a full rundown of the Rapunzel ride and area, just like we've just done about the Frozen area of Fantasy Springs, check out this video.